Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the future of event marketing. I am Alexandra Gibson, the CMO of Event Farm, and I'm joined today by David Adler, who is the CEO and co-founder of BizBash Media. BizBash was founded in 2000 and has become the most authoritative source for the event industry through its website and events. The site has over 2 million users annually, and it covers all aspects of the event industry, from corporate to incentive, to trade shows, to consumers, and everything in between. So David, thank you so much for joining us today, and really looking forward to gathering some insights from you from a long career of probably seeing just about everything.
Thank you, Alexandra. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, you've been in the events industry for quite a while. In fact, probably most of your career, but you started out planning and then moved over started out running events and then moved over into the media company.
Actually, that's not true. I started a society magazine actually in Washington, D.C. So for about 15 years, I did nothing but go to events and talk to senators, congressmen, and ambassadors to find out what they want and what they liked. And I found that the event industry was really a secret weapon for most of them. And so once I actually sold my magazine, I ended up moving to New York and became head of corporate communications for a Fortune 500 company called Macmillan and a company called Prime Media. And we spent lots of money on events before events were really taken seriously. So in about 2000, we saw this thing called the internet coming around and decided, wow, this could be a place that people can actually shop for things and peek over the fence to see what other people are doing. So we started this media site that allowed planners to actually see what other people are doing, because you realize you don't get into someone else's event. So there's no source of competitiveness.
Right. And you mentioned that when you started your career, you were going to a lot of these events because you had your publication, and
Yes.
that was the kind of most important thing going on with politicians and high-powered individuals in Washington. How has that changed, or has it?
Well, I think that really the main thing that politicians know how to do are being event organizers. They're the ones that their whole campaigns are based on events, and it becomes sort of the touch point that builds trust with their audience, and they learn that. And now brands have learned that. And so most people have more of a political model in doing their events, that they call events campaigns now, because they are emulating the campaign of a politician. So it's really interesting to see how things have not really changed, but they have changed in that I always say that, with 25% of marketing now event oriented, that event organizers are no longer sitting at the children's table for Thanksgiving. We are in the boardrooms and represented in the big time world.
Well, that's a good kind of segue and piggybacks onto my next question of what place are you seeing events play in the future, especially 2016 and beyond, not as, event marketing, but as part of a larger marketing strategy. It's the full department.
A larger life strategy that's happening. I think that events are the new town square. And that when you think about how media has become so diffused, and that, we used to in the 50s, 60s, and even 70s and 80s and 90s, we would sit around a television set and we would all learn one thing. Now there's no such thing as that. So events become the new town square, and that's where people are becoming more tribal. And, the aspect of being tribal means gathering. And when you gather, that is what an event is.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That I saw that BizBash has a large ownership in or stake in an online video training site that's for the event industry.
Yes.
Do you think that online events will or have cannibalized offline? What's going to happen in the future with that?
Well, I think that there's the hybrid event that's happening now, that people are meeting. I think that events and technology work hand in hand, because really the idea is to somehow leverage what happens. The reason the event industry is doing so well now is because of social media, really. Because you're no longer talking to the 200 people in the room, or even the 1,000 or the 10,000 people in the room. You're talking to their 17 people that they know personally, and to millions and millions of other people. That's why event budgets are actually being justified now in a big way. We always knew it as event organizers, that this is the most sophisticated way to reach people and build trust. But now the marketing metrics are there behind it all. So I think that's what has changed. We do at Event Leadership Institute It's training for event organizers. And we do online training and we do face-to-face training. We're finding that some people are auditory learners. Some people like taking classes in person. Some people like looking at on video screens. So luckily, I'm more of an auditory learner. So I listen, I hear things. And so all of these techniques are good. And so all these different touch points are important in almost every event type that you do. An online event is an event. Tying it in with a face-to-face event builds more trust, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Beyond things like conferences and meetings, but really events that might have been seen as consumer type events, how is that being worked into a B2B marketing strategy, and how are they measuring success?
I always use that line from the song that everybody kind of hates now, Blurred Lines. You know, that song. Yep. And that everything is all blurred. Because we really, the consumer expectations are high, even in the B2B world. So when you go to a Salesforce conference, Dreamforce, and you see what they're doing, that's a B2B environment, but it's really consumer speak. And so everyone is expecting consumer activations and consumer experiences because they know how to experience. That's what they want. And so it's all morphing together. And I think that the palette of the attendee is changing. In fact, we even banned the word attendee. Nobody's really an attendee anymore. They're all participants. It's a subtle change, but you want to make sure that everybody is a participant in the experience, not an attendee. It's no longer sell and tell. It's ask and engage. And that's a major difference that we're seeing, especially with the millennials. They want to participate and they want to put their 2 cents in and they want to tell stories at the event and they want to activate it and tell their friends. Make sense? That makes sense too.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you see that across so many different platforms, and as you said, the social media aspect is really adding so much fire or so much fuel to events. But when you talk about these things, how we're all consumers, even if it's B2B, how though does a company measure whether an event that they're spending quite a bit of money on, how do they know if they're successful?
ROI. We just did a podcast on our new Gather Geeks on ROI, and it is still the holy grail of trying to figure it out. I don't think people have totally figured it out. A lot of people talk about ROI. In a ticketed event, your ROI because you sell tickets and you know what happens. How do you measure your ROI is up for debate, and it depends on every different organization. Some companies like banks are looking for long-term relationships and they're trying to grow their relationships. Other people, there's a book I've been talking about called Social Physics that talks about, they study sort of how people gather. And so it convinced me to think about events, not in terms of how many people attend, but by how many conversations that you're curating at an event. So there's millions of ways of deciding ROI. There is also negative ROI. There's should you even have that event? Could you do something that's so ridiculous that it hurts your brand or hurts your cause? Because we're all marketing something, whether you're a charity, whether you're an internal meeting, whether you're whether you're an academics, you're marketing something. And so this whole idea of collaborating and teaching people and spreading your message is so critical.
Yeah, absolutely. So, talk to us a little bit about experiential marketing. What is that going to look like in the future, and how is that playing into not just, the cool new trick, but achieving business objectives, and why is that important in events?
I think that experiential marketing is an old term. I think that the new term is transformational marketing. That when you go to an event, that you really remember. What is the old Maya Angelou quote, which there's debate whether she said it or not, that people won't understand or hear what you said, they'll remember how you felt. And so you want to create emotion and storytelling in events so people will remember how you felt at that event. I go to things like Women in the World, that's done by Tina Brown, and you actually literally have goosebumps when you hear the speaker speak and you talk to the other people. And that's what people want. They want experiences that are transformational, or why spend the time? Don't forget, events are the new luxury. And I always use this line I steal from Scott Heffernan, and he says that it's not, Scott Heffernan started meetup.com. It's not about, it's about contact is king, not content. And so people want to be in the room with people to create managed serendipity, I believe. And that's one of the greatest things about what events do. And neuroscience supports that.
No, it's so true that even though we spend so much time in front of screens and, living in kind of a digital environment, that we still crave, and, the digital part supports the physical aspect.
Yeah,
And
but you know what? What's also interesting, though, sorry to interrupt, the the new type of event organizing, you have to actually program in the introvert. You have to, because they're so used to dealing with screens, you actually have to create experiences that tailor to the introvert so that it brings them out of their shells in many cases. Because not everyone is as bubbly as you and I.
right. I mean, I even experienced that it's not that easy to walk into a room of, 1,000 people that you don't know anyone. And how do you sort of get the conversation started?
Yep. Yep.
Or give something of meaning where it's not just, constant kind of chat time.
Yeah. You know
Yeah.
what? You know what I brought back at my events? I brought back the receiving line, because I believe that me as the host, I want to meet as many people before they actually get into the party, because once they get into the party, I will never be able to meet them. So a smart host wants to have a receiving line so that they have an interaction, that you feel like at least you met somebody when you, as a guest. So I believe that that's really what's the hallmark of a good collaboration athlete. And I think an event organizer is a collaboration athlete. I think an event attendee or event participant has to also understand how to be a collaboration athlete and put effort into it. To go to a party just to get, you may want to get the free drinks and the hors d'oeuvres, but one conversation with one person can change your life, and no one takes advantage. People don't take advantage of that like they should.
No, it's absolutely true. So in talking about the digital and the physical environment, so as a media publisher who has a large digital presence, how are you seeing marketers that are, potentially your clients or are your clients balance the two as far as spend and brand and every different aspect of their marketing strategy?
Well, we serve the event industry, so we're not actually serving the brands. We're telling the brands how other people are doing their events and what they're using to create their palette for creating great events. And that being said, that we think that brands have to use both the technology and the face-to-face in order to do it well. They have to merge them together. Technology is just part of the mix. I mean, imagine what somebody said, okay, why don't we serve alcohol events when people gather? I mean, it's kind of the same thing, that like it's just an accoutrement to make it easier for people to gather and have fun. I mean, fun is still the ultimate game in any way. Yes, substance is fun. Learning is fun. Everything about collaboration is fun. And if it's torture, you're not going to go. So you have to make it so that it becomes sort of natural. And so I think that the bringing the technology is going to interfere less and less, because you won't even know it's there. It just happens, in my opinion.
This
And
is
so
very
I
true.
think, and I think that you're seeing that the most interesting thing I've seen in the marketing space is the "What's Up" campaign, whatever campaign Bud Light did, where they took over a whole town.
Up
This
for
is a
whatever.
seminal change in marketing, where they're using events as the centerpiece, where they're actually shooting all the content for all the events, for all of their commercials on TV and on podcasts and everything else at this event where they're bringing everybody to. And because of they're building like 1,000 advocates for the brand, and people are telling stories, it is the ultimate best use of an event as the ambassador for the brand. And you're going to see more and more of that.
Yeah. So
I think
you
that's also
founded
an interesting.
you founded BizBash when the internet was still fairly young, and now we're talking about not just the internet, but the Internet of Things. So how do you think that the Internet of Things will play into how brands use events through technologies like beacons, NFC, RFID, everything, wearable tech, and all of
I
the
heard
technologies?
the greatest term last year, actually on a podcast, and I didn't know about it, but I've adopted this word as my own, called it's crowd shaping. It's called crowd shaping. Because of technology, you will know how people are feeling based on their heart rate, based on their emotions, based on the sentiment that they're actually tweeting out in their social media, let's say. So you're going to be able to adjust things on the fly. And that's what you're going to see. You're going to see a lot more changing the room based on the metrics and the data that you get right there on the spot. The DJ, for example, will change the music based on the heart rates of the people that are in the room. You're going to have that data, basically. So you're going to see a lot of crowd shaping happening. You're going to see a lot of new techniques in being a collaboration athlete that allows a person that learns something in a conference setting to be able to transmit that information to their people back home right away. Because you know what happens to me when I go to a conference now? I'm so excited. I get all the information. I want to tell everybody. I get home and I forget everything. So I think what you're going to see is actually at the conferences, you're going to see ways that people are going to be broadcasting back what they learned directly and not have a lag. And I think that's going to be a new thing. I think you're going to also see new ways. I mean, this is not wearables, but it's, I use the Myo. Have you heard of the Myo? So I basically put this thing on my arm that attaches to my muscles. So when I do a presentation and change the slides, I basically click with my fingers and it changes the slides. It's the same, and it uses your muscles to do that. It's the same technique that if you go to the gym and you are on the bike or you're on the elliptical or something, and you wearing your headphones and it's hard to change the music, if you have your Myo on, you just wave like this or like this, and the songs change. Or you want to go up the music, you just take your fist like this. It's amazing what is happening in that world. You're going to see just the beginning of that. You're going to see smart chairs, for example, where the chairs are actually going to have what you like and what you don't like on your food and all the messages. You're going to see all this cool new things that are happening. You're going to be able to buy things with your Bitcoins and on the blockchain. I mean, this is like the beginning. You're going to see people who will plan by using holographic techniques or Oculus Rift or something like that to create virtual events from the inventory of the vendors. That's going to be coming too. I mean, it's going to be remarkable.
So playing kind of the CFO or CMO, usually probably the CFO, why does this matter? Like, why does this matter for the bottom line? What do you say to the CFO when you are the CMO or the director of events?
Our whole goal is to get not the event people to do more events, but the CEO to think about the power of events. And politicians understand the power of events, and a smart CEO understand the power of events. You see trust equals higher performance. 286%, the companies that are highly trusted have a 286% higher profitability than people that are not trusted. And you can translate trust into using events and face-to-face as one of the primary tools. And I think you're going to see more and more of that.
Well, it's very true. Politicians did get that right. I guess you can't shake hands and kiss babies online. So, you know,
there's this chemical that I actually talk about in neuroscience called oxytocin. Oxytocin is known as the cuddling chemical between moms and kids. But now there are all these studies about how that's how people are connecting at events. It's through the ums and the ahs and the things that you don't realize that you're communicating are passing on this oxytocin. It's like there was a story that Anderson Cooper did recently on 60 Minutes, and he talked about why does your dog love you? Your dog loved you because there's this oxytocin exchange that's happening, and it builds the trust. So, we think we're so, complex, but it's fairly simple. At events, when you're in the same room together, you get to like each other, or you get to, if you're an introvert, you may want to run away, but you have to use it as a way to be comfortable. And as I said, when it's easy and fun, people want to gather. Humans want to gather. That's like a natural thing.
So for the event marketers of the future, when you see the people who are really doing it right, what skill sets do they possess, and what do people need to bone up on?
Well, I think you have to be, they call this in technology, and there's different definitions of it. You have to be a unicorn. You have to be able to understand popular culture. You have to understand technology. You have to understand coding. You have to understand finance. You have to understand neuroscience. I mean, neuroscience to me is absolutely the sort of secret weapon in events, because you know that if you make a wall red, it elicits a reaction in your brain in some ways. Blue, if you want to do something for brainstorming, red for details. If you put people on hard chairs, they're going to be less flexible than soft chairs. I mean, all of this actually has neuroscience ramifications, and you're seeing more and more people studying neuroscience for consumer marketing. And an event organizer does it instinctually, but along with being a collaboration athlete and understanding how people learn, I mean, also understanding learning is part of neuroscience as well. So I think that those are the skills that a smart planner is not just a logistic person. He's using his left brain, he's using his right brain, he's using audio visual to stimulate the brain so they don't think that it's boring. You mean, when you see these fancy audio visual shows, it's not about the fancy audio visual show, it's about waking up the brain. That's what it's all about. And because if you go into a room, a white room, and you see 6 chairs and you see a panel discussion, you're going to like glaze over and know it's boring before it even starts.
And for some reason, those rooms are always about 55 degrees. So yeah. I don't know if
they want to keep you up because they want to. That's probably one of the techniques that they probably use. But I think that smart event organizers and smart political campaign managers and smart CEOs, and I believe that the future CMOs of the world are the community managers of today, because the community managers of today are the people that actually know what their customers want, and they're actually talking to their customers. In the previous days, it was the technology people that became the CMOs, but now it's the people that understand the markets and the people and actually do things. And the community manager is the front line of front lines, and they're in the middle of events. I say that decor is social media now. So you don't really want to make 100 centerpieces for 100 tables. You want that wow, and you want the money shot at an event. Right? That's what you're, absolutely, as a CMO, you're trying to do that too.
Yes. Yeah. Well, David, thank you so much for spending the time today. It was very insightful and great to have someone with your experience on our series. So very much appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And tune into our Gather Geeks podcast too.
Absolutely. Yep. I have listened to, I can give a plug for the Gather Geeks podcast. I've listened to every episode at this point. I think there have been 3 or 4, and thoroughly enjoyed.
We're about to do our 4th on food. We actually have someone's going to be doing a conference food critic.
Are you also sending samples to all the listeners?
Well, maybe, you never know. Thanks, Alexandra.
Thank you
so much.